Today on Tricrow Studios, we talk about 5 things that I wish I had known about guitar from the beginning. First and foremost, I want to say there's definitely going to be way better lists out there. There's just 5 things I personally think I would have benefited from. One thing I learned like maybe a year and a half or 2 years in that I'm going to go over. But this is a list that I think had I known all about these 5 things from the beginning, I would be a better guitar player than I am today. Number 1, gear does not make you a better guitar player. Now, I know I have I don't even know how many guitars I own now. It's like 48 or 49. I have like 37 amps and all this stuff. I have a lot of gear nowadays because I'm a musician. I love instruments. But I was one of those guitar players that thought till I have a Gibson Explorer or a Paul Reed Smith or this or that, I'm not going to be able to be a truly good guitar player. And it always felt like, in the beginning, I was just practicing, so when I did get those better instruments were going to make me an even better player. When the truth is, better instruments are generally more about comfort and preference. But it's the practice and the will to get better that will actually make you a better guitar player. So no matter what guitar you have, playing it all the time and learning new things and learning different styles, that's what's going to make you a better guitar player. Now, if you have a guitar that will never stay in tune or all these different things or that's falling apart, consider, if you don't have the money to buy a better instrument, maybe get things that'll help that instrument stay in tune, like tuners, better bridge, things like that. But just because someone has very expensive instruments, I know I'm holding one right now, doesn't necessarily mean that they're a better guitar player. It's all of their experience and their dedication and their will that actually helps them become that. Number 2, and this is something I really wish I would have known, the amount of wraps around the posts doesn't necessarily matter as much as you think. I was one of those guitar players that you still see today that when they're changing strings, they're wrapping as many as they possibly can around the post before they feed it into the slot. That's actually going to work against you, especially if you're a lead player. One of the benefits of locking tuners is it lessens the amount of wraps. So if you're tuning, especially if you're tuning down as opposed to up, that means there's going to be more slack around the post, and that slack from the post to the nut can actually make it so when you're bending a note, that string will now go flat. So if you have more wraps, there's more chance of slack. The less amount of wraps, or least amount of wraps around here, it's actually going to be better for you because there's less of that chance of slack. Nowadays, instead of the million wraps, or I would have super glued a friggin' string on here if I could have, just because that's what I thought. But what I do nowadays is 1 wrap, 1 wrap, 1 wrap, 1 wrap, 2 wraps, and 2 wraps. I could probably get away with 1 wrap on each, but I don't know. I'm a little crazy sometimes. Number 3, play with a tuner and test your tuning skills. Now, when I learned to play guitar for the first year and a half, I actually learned to tune from a Nirvana live video. Think about that. That's a problem. I didn't own a tuner back then, so I literally tuned by ear, which, in retrospect, that's good because I'm training my ear. However, I'm still doing it from a Nirvana live video. That makes no sense. The best thing for me to have done would be to always have a tuner, either a pedal tuner, a clip-on tuner, or a rack tuner like I have now, and play through that. That way you absolutely do know that your strings are in tune. And testing your tuning is good because you can learn different ways to drop your tuning. And you do get a little bit of muscle memory for certain pitches. One thing that I learned, I think like a year and a half or 2 years in, I still don't remember how I learned it. It was either watching a video tape at that point, or speaking to someone at a music store. I remember thinking, why when I'm playing leads do my strings always go flat? And that's when I learned, always tune up to pitch, never tune down to pitch. And then, once you've tuned to the proper tuning, tug on your strings. When you do that, it will take out any of the slack on the posts or the slack that's built up from the post to the nut. That will then bring your string flat. Then you tune up to pitch again, and then do that again. I do that generally 3 times, and that gets all the slack out of my strings. And then at that point, I'm generally staying in tune, especially when playing leads, for at least an hour or 2 or 3 hours. Number 4, play what is comfortable, not what is popular. When I picked up a guitar, this is the guitar that I wanted. It worked out for me because the way that I learned to play guitar, I hunched myself over. So with a Strat, I always had the upper horn of a Strat digging into my sternum, which is really stupid. But this Explorer shape really worked for me until it didn't. Flying V's were the same. I didn't have that issue where it was digging into my sternum, and I like sitting in the classical way where the fin is between your legs. You have a lot of access to the upper frets. Explorers and Flying V's back in my day were extremely popular because of basically Metallica. And that actually clouded my judgment when it came to other guitars. Because of that, I basically ignored what is now my favorite type of guitar. Again, upper horn, I learned hunched over, so digs right into my sternum, right? Don't do that. I eventually stopped doing that, and it wasn't actually until about last year, around this time, when I gave the Strat more of my attention and I started to learn more about it. To me, this guitar here, or any other Strat that I own, is perfect for leads. It's extremely comfortable to play. When I'm digging in, the vibrations that I get from it are very, very favorable to me. And there's just so many tonal options, especially if you have a deluxe like I have, where it has the S1 switch, or P1. But it gives you 10 different tonal options. Regular Strat should give you 5 different tonal options, as opposed to most other ones, which are 3 tonal options. But I wouldn't have known that if I stuck with the 2 shapes that I originally had or originally wanted. And finally, number 5, basic maintenance is not scary at all. Now, there are definitely benefits to taking your guitar to an experienced and trained tech. Someone who's been doing this for years. They can diagnose problems with your guitar that you may not know about. They can do a lot of soldering. They can do upgrades that you may not find easy to do yourself. However, you don't need to take your guitar to a tech if you invest a little bit of time into learning what you like or what you prefer to play on your guitar. Things like string height, where especially on a Tune-o-matic, just raising the Tune-o-matic itself. Same thing with the 6-saddle tremolo systems. Raising your bridge itself will raise the strings, and that way you can actually play around with string height. If you raise your strings too high, you can lower it down to get it back to where you want it. Adjusting your truss rod can be very scary to do. Just don't do it a lot, and do it incrementally. So, If you're looking for more of a bow because your neck is too straight or it has an up bow to it, ways to know that: if you're playing, not in tune, but if you're playing and your first 2 frets are getting buzzed, that means you more than likely have a little bit of up bow. So what you would do is you would take the truss rod cover off, adjust your truss rod, and to adjust it, you would actually just place the tool in there and do 1/4 a turn. So you turn from the middle of the nut to the end of the nut. You do that towards your high strings. That will give you more relief. You should have a little bit of a back bow, and straight necks and up bows can give you buzzing from the 1st to the 5th fret. I find usually between the 3rd and 5th fret, if you have a straight neck, there's a little bit more of a buzz. The opposite can be done if you have too much of a neck. Some people call it a banana neck. You can take a truss rod adjustment tool and go from the middle of the nut to the top of the nut. So adjust it towards the thicker strings here, and that will actually straighten your neck out a little bit. Again, try it for yourself. Don't go crazy. Only do those turns from the halfway point of the nut to the end of the nut. Don't turn it like 15 different times. You can actually break your truss rod, but if you're doing it in small incremental steps, that's just better for you to learn. Adjusting intonation is very easy, even though it sounds scary. You basically need a screwdriver and a tuner. So what you would do is you would choose a string, hit the open string, hit the 12th fret harmonic, should sound the exact same, and then lightly fret the 12th fret. That should sound the same as the harmonic. Checking it with a tuner, if it's not, and if it's flat, you need to decrease the length of the string. So you would want to take your saddle and use a screwdriver and move that closer to the fretboard itself. You want to do that every time. That's going to change the pitch of your string, so you have to retune. But you do that until everything is in tune, and 12th fret and open are the same. The adverse would be the way is if this is sharp, you need to increase the length of your string by taking the saddle and moving it further back, so away from the fretboard. That's very, very easy to do. Again, a little time consuming, but it's great practice, and it's only going to benefit you and save you a little bit of money in the long run. Alright, so there you go. There's my personal list of 5 things that I wish I had known about guitar from the beginning. I firmly believe that had I known those 5 things, I would be a better guitar player, a more versatile guitar player, I believe, than what I am today. I'm happy with where I'm at, but just like every guitar player, you get in ruts, and then eventually you get out of those ruts and you become a better guitar player. It's just the cycle. It happens. There's definitely better lists out there, and hopefully you've found some benefit in this. Maybe, after years and years and years of playing, there's some things that you weren't aware of, or you're a beginner yourself and you're going to take these things and try to better yourself and push yourself forward as a guitar player. Anyway, thanks for watching.